My name is Lena. I am 19 years old. I live in a small yellow house near a river. The air is quiet there, but sometimes it feels heavy, like the sky before rain. I live with my mother and my stepdad, Mark. My mother is kind but always tired. She works long hours at a shop in town. When she comes home, she smiles at me, but her eyes look sleepy. I love her smile, but I know she has no energy to talk much. Mark is different. He is big and serious. His voice is deep and cold. He likes everything to be quiet and clean. When I drop a spoon or forget to close the door, he frowns and says, "You never think." I always whisper, "Sorry." I do not hate him, but I do not feel safe near him either. It is like walking on a thin bridge. One wrong step and it breaks. After school, I usually go to my room. I do my homework, listen to music with my earphones, and look out of the window. The river shines when the sun goes down. I like that light. It feels calm, like the world is still good. Sometimes I think if I were older, I could live alone. Then I feel bad, because my mother loves me. I don't want her to think I want to leave her. One evening, my mother came home late again. I had already cooked rice and eggs for dinner. Mark sat at the table, reading something on his phone. The sound of the spoon hitting the plate was the only noise in the room. "Why is the rice cold?" he asked. "I made it 1 hour ago," I said softly. "Mom wasn't home yet." He sighed and looked at me for a long time. His eyes were not angry, but they made me nervous. "Next time, wait. I don't like cold food," he said. I nodded and whispered, "Okay." After dinner, I washed the dishes. The water was warm on my hands, and I watched the bubbles disappear down the drain. I thought, one day I will wash dishes in my own kitchen. I will play music loud, and no one will tell me to stop. The next day after school, I didn't go straight home. I walked slowly, following a small path behind the school. It led to an old wooden fence. Behind the fence was a garden, quiet, green, and full of flowers. The air smelled sweet. I saw a small bench under a tree, so I sat there. I could hear the birds singing and the wind moving the leaves. "This place is mine now," I said quietly to myself. I took out my small notebook. It was blue with stars on the cover. I started to write. "I am not strong yet, but I will be. I will find light, even if everything feels dark now." I smiled a little after writing that. For a few minutes, I didn't feel small or scared. I felt like I was part of something bigger. The trees, the sky, the sun. While I was sitting there, I heard a sound behind me. I turned and saw a boy about my age. He had short hair and a shy smile. "Oh, sorry," he said. "I didn't know someone comes here." "It's okay," I said. "Do you come here too?" "Sometimes," he said. It's quiet here. I like it. We talked for a while. His name was Ben. He was in the same school but in a different class. He liked to draw, and he showed me a small sketchbook full of trees, birds and rivers. Wow, I said. You're good. He smiled. Thanks. My mom says drawing helps me think less and feel more. I laughed softly. Maybe I need that too. When I went home, my heart felt lighter. It was strange. For the first time in a long while, I looked forward to the next day. That night, Mark came home early. My mother was still at work. I was sitting at the table, writing in my notebook. What are you writing? He asked suddenly. I jumped a little. Just school things, I said quickly and closed it. He walked closer. Show me. It's just for me, I said, my voice shaking a bit. He looked at me for a moment, then shrugged. Fine, keep your secrets. But remember, this is my house. You follow my rules. He walked away, and I felt my hands shaking. After a few minutes, I opened the notebook again and wrote, I will follow rules, but my heart is still mine. The words made me feel brave. I read them again and again before I went to sleep. Before bed, I looked out my window. The moonlight fell on the river. I whispered, thank you, to the night. I didn't know why. Maybe for Ben, maybe for the secret garden, or maybe just for still being okay. I closed my eyes and imagined the light growing inside me, slow but strong. That night, I dreamed about walking through the garden with a notebook full of bright pages. The next morning, I woke up early. The sun was already bright, painting gold lines on my wall. I looked at my notebook on the table. The words from last night were still there. I will follow rules, but my heart is still mine. I smiled a little. It was a small sentence, but it felt big inside me. I dressed quickly and ate breakfast alone. Mum had already gone to work and Mark was still sleeping. I didn't want to see him, so I walked quietly out of the house and went to school early. The secret place again. After school, I went straight to the secret garden. When I opened the old fence, I saw Ben sitting on the bench, drawing again. Hi, I said. He looked up and smiled. You came back. Of course. It's peaceful here, I said. He nodded. Yeah. When I draw here, I forget the world outside. It feels like the wind is listening. I sat beside him. I like that idea, I said softly. The wind listening. For a while we didn't talk much. The birds sang and the leaves made soft sounds above us. I watched him draw. His hands moved slowly and carefully. Can I see? I asked. He turned the paper to me. It was a picture of the garden, the tree, the flowers, the little fence, and even the small bench where we sat. It looked alive. You can keep it if you want. Really? He nodded. I smiled and held the paper carefully, as if it was something very special. Thank you, Ben. I'll keep it safe. We left the garden together that day. The sky was pink and soft. Ben carried his sketchbook, and I carried my notebook. We walked slowly by the river. Do you ever feel like no one understands you? I asked quietly. He looked at me. All the time, he said. My dad works in another city, and my mom is always busy. Sometimes I feel invisible. I nodded. I feel like that too. We walked a little more without talking. The sound of water and our steps filled the silence. Then he said, "But I think sometimes we just need one person who listens. It makes a big difference." I looked at him and smiled. Maybe that's true. When I reached home, I felt calm. It was the first day in a long time that I didn't feel scared of going inside. Mark was sitting on the sofa watching TV. I walked past him quietly, but he spoke. "You're late," he said. "I was studying with a friend," I said. He turned to look at me. "A boy?" I didn't answer right away. I felt my heart beat fast. "Yes. His name is Ben. He's in my school." He frowned. "You're too young for that. Don't go out with boys." "I'm not going out with him," I said. "We're just friends." He looked at me again, long and cold. Then he said, "Be careful. I don't want problems in this house." I nodded and went to my room. I closed the door and leaned against it, breathing slowly. My hands were shaking, but I didn't cry. I opened my notebook and wrote, "I am not doing anything wrong. I have the right to have friends." When I read those words, I felt stronger again. The talk with Mom. That weekend, I helped my mother clean the kitchen. She was quiet, but I could see she was thinking about something. Finally, she said softly, "Lena, you're quiet these days. Is everything okay?" I looked at her. For a second, I wanted to tell her everything. How Mark made me scared. How I felt small in my own home. But then I saw her tired eyes and I stopped myself. "I'm fine, Mom," I said. "Just school things." She smiled a little and touched my shoulder. "You're growing fast. I want you to be happy, okay?" I nodded. "I will try." When she walked away, I felt a mix of sadness and love. She cared, but she didn't see everything that was happening. The next week, I met Ben again. I showed him my notebook. "Do you write every day?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "It helps me think. I write about what I feel. I don't always understand it, but writing makes it softer." He nodded. "Like drawing for me." We sat together and shared our pages. My words were simple, sometimes only one line, like, "I want to feel free," or, "I will not be afraid forever." His pictures were full of color and life. Trees, rivers, faces, even clouds. He looked at my words and said quietly, "You have a brave heart." I laughed a little. "Brave?" I don't think so. I'm always scared. He shook his head. Even when you're scared, you still write. That's brave. I didn't know what to say. My face felt warm, but not in a bad way. For the first time, someone saw the good in me. One afternoon, dark clouds filled the sky. The rain came fast, loud, and heavy. At home, the windows shook with wind. Mark was home, sitting in the living room. I tried to go to my room, but he called, "Come here." I stopped. My heart beat faster. "Yes, sit down," he said. "I want to talk." I sat slowly on the chair. The sound of rain filled the room. "I don't like you coming home late," he said. "Your mother worries." "I understand," I said quietly. "But I just stay at school or the garden. It's not dangerous." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something different in his eyes. Not anger, but maybe confusion. "Garden?" he said. "Yes, I go there to read and write. It helps me feel calm." He said nothing for a moment, then sighed. "Fine, but be home before dark." I blinked in surprise. He had never spoken so softly before. "Okay," I said. When I went to my room, I sat on my bed for a long time, listening to the rain. Maybe he was not always bad. Maybe he didn't know how to be kind. The next morning, the air was clean after the rain. I woke up early, made breakfast, and packed my school bag. Before leaving, I saw Mark in the kitchen. He was drinking coffee. "Good morning," I said quietly. He looked at me and nodded. Morning. It was a small word, but it felt like a big step. At school, there was a small festival. Students decorated the hall with lights and paper flowers. There was music, food, and laughter. Ben came with his drawings, and I helped him hang them on a wall for the art show. When I saw all his pictures together, I smiled. "They look amazing." He grinned. "Thanks. And your poems?" I looked at him, surprised. "My poems?" "Yes," he said. "You write so well. You should show them too." I shook my head quickly. "No one wants to read them." "I do," he said. "And maybe others will too." He helped me choose 3 short pieces from my notebook. We copied them neatly on paper and pinned them next to his drawings. When people walked by, some of them stopped to read. One teacher said, "This is beautiful, Lena." I didn't know what to say. My face turned warm, but I felt proud. After that day, I changed little by little. At home, I spoke more. I said good morning. I asked questions. I laughed softly when Mom told a story. Mark didn't shout as much anymore. He still looked serious, but I noticed he sometimes listened when I spoke. One evening he even said, "Your rice tastes better these days." I smiled a little. "Thank you." They were small things, but they made the house feel lighter. That night, I sat by the window and opened my notebook. The river outside was shining again. The moon was full and calm. I wrote, "The light is not far. I can see it now." I thought about Ben, about my mother, about the secret garden. I thought about how scared I had been and how far I had come. Maybe I was still learning. Maybe I would still cry sometimes. But I was growing, slowly, gently, like a flower after rain. I closed my notebook and whispered, "Thank you, world." Then I turned off the light and went to sleep, feeling safe in my small room. The days passed quietly after the school festival. I still went to the garden almost every afternoon. The air there always smelled like peace. The flowers were open again after the big rain. Sometimes Ben came, sometimes I sat alone. Both felt good. One afternoon I brought my notebook and a small sandwich for lunch. I sat under the tree and began to write. The wind touched my face. I thought about the last few months. How scared I was before, and how different I felt now. "I can breathe again," I wrote. "I am not the same Lena. I am growing." I smiled when I read the words. They felt true. A message from Ben. When I got home that day, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ben. "Hey, Lena. The teacher said our poems and drawings will be printed in the school book this year." My heart jumped. I read it twice to make sure I understood. Then I laughed, a real laugh, loud enough that Mom looked at me from the kitchen. "What is it?" she asked. "Our school will print my poem," I said. "In the book." She wiped her hands and smiled. "Really? That's wonderful, Lena." I nodded. "Ben helped me send it." Mom looked happy, but a little surprised. "Ben? He's my friend," I said. "He likes to draw." She smiled again. "I'm glad you have a good friend." It felt warm to hear her say that, but not every day was easy. One evening, Mark came home earlier than usual. His face looked tired and serious. I was in the kitchen, finishing my homework. He sat down and said, "Lena, we need to talk." My hands shook a little, but I looked at him. "Okay. I heard from one of the neighbors that you walk with a boy every day," he said. "Yes, Ben," I answered quietly. He frowned. "People talk, you know. They say bad things about girls who walk with boys." I felt heat in my face. "We are just friends, Mark. He helps me with art, and I help him with English." He sighed. "You don't understand the world yet." I wanted to be quiet like always, but something in me was stronger now. I looked at him and said, "Maybe, but I'm learning. And you don't have to believe everything people say." For a long moment he just looked at me. The room felt cold, but I didn't look away. Finally he stood up and said, "Fine. Just don't stay out late." When he left, I sat very still. My heart was beating fast, but I wasn't afraid like before. I felt something new, maybe pride. I spoke. I wrote later in my notebook, and the sky didn't fall. A week later, I found the courage to tell Mom more. We were washing dishes together after dinner. The water was warm and the smell of soap filled the air. Mum, I said slowly, can I tell you something? She looked at me. Of course. I took a deep breath. Sometimes Mark makes me feel small. I know he doesn't hit me, but he scares me with his voice. I don't like it. She stopped washing and looked surprised. He shouts at you. Not always, I said. But when he does, it makes me afraid to talk. Mum was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. I didn't know you felt that way. I'm sorry, Lena. It's not your fault, I said. I just wanted you to know. She nodded slowly. I'll talk to him. You shouldn't feel afraid in your own house. That night she knocked on my door before bed and said softly, I spoke with Mark. He didn't realize how hard it was for you. He said he will try to be better. I didn't know if it would really change, but it was the first time I felt like my voice had power. The next weekend, Ben and I met again. The sky was blue and sunlight danced on the leaves. I told him about the poem being printed. That's amazing, he said. See? Your words shine. I laughed. Maybe a little. He took out his new sketchbook. I want to draw you in the garden, with your notebook. I smiled shyly. Me? Yes, he said. Because you belong here, with the light. I sat on the bench while he drew. The sound of pencils and birds mixed together. I closed my eyes for a moment and just listened. The wind felt like a hug. When he finished, he showed me the drawing. It was me, sitting under the tree, smiling softly, with sunlight all around. It's beautiful, I said. He smiled. Because you look peaceful. And I realized I really was. A month later, the school book came out. On one page was my poem, printed under my name, Finding the Light. The sky can be dark, the river can be deep, but I still walk, because I believe the light will find me. When I read it, I felt tears in my eyes, but they were good tears. My teacher smiled at me and said, You have a gift, Lena. Keep writing. At home, Mum put the book on the table so everyone could see. Even Mark picked it up and read the poem. He looked at me for a second and said quietly, It's good. Thank you, I said. It was only 2 words, but they felt like peace. One evening I walked alone by the river. The air was soft, and the water shone under the sunset. I remembered the nights when I had watched the same river and felt trapped. Now it looked different. Open kind. I sat down and opened my notebook again. I am free inside, I wrote. Even when life is hard, I can still see light. I drew a small star next to the words. Then I closed the book and just watched the sky turn gold and pink. That night, I wrote something new. A letter to my old self. Dear Lena, you were scared. You cried in silence. You thought no one would listen. But you were wrong. You found friends. You spoke. You stood up. The world is not always safe, but there are good people and good places. Keep walking toward them. Keep writing. You are strong. Even when you feel small. With love, me. When I finished writing, I felt calm, like I had closed a door gently behind me. The garden in summer. Summer came again. The garden was full of color. New flowers grew where the rain had fallen before. I went there with Ben and our notebooks. He gave me a small gift, a wooden pencil with my name carved on it. For more stories, he said. I smiled. Thank you, Ben. We sat under the tree again, writing and drawing in silence. The air smelled like hope. I looked at the sky and said quietly, I think I'm happy. Ben smiled. You deserve to be. When I went home that evening, I saw Mom and Mark sitting together in the living room. They were talking softly. When they saw me, Mom said, We ordered your favorite dinner tonight. I was surprised. Really? Yes, Mark said. You've worked hard. You deserve it. I didn't know what to say. Maybe people can change. Slowly, like the weather. We ate together. It was quiet but peaceful. I laughed once, and even Mark smiled a little. Later, in my room, I opened the window. The night air came in, full of small sounds, frogs, crickets, the soft flow of the river. I whispered to the dark, Thank you, world, for not giving up on me. I turned to the last page of my notebook and wrote, This is the end of one story and the start of another. I was once afraid. Now I am brave. I was once alone. Now I have light. I closed the notebook and placed it on my desk. The moonlight touched it, and it looked almost silver. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I needed to hide. I didn't need a secret garden to feel safe, because the light I was looking for had grown inside me. I lay down and smiled. Tomorrow would come with its own noise, its own people, its own surprises. But I knew I could face them, because now I believed the light will always find me.